talk a little bit about the sensory input part. Eye-head stabilization. I've mentioned this before, but I don't know if I've mentioned it as a really call out this concept. We, as human beings, we fight to maintain our vision on our horizon. It is absolutely critical to us as animals that we have that sense of the horizon out there. Infants struggle to get their heads up to be able to see that horizon. So, head-eye stabilization is a developmental stage of vision that allows for your eyes to track independently from what your head is doing. So, this is while you're walking along and you're thinking about something and your eyes are tracking back and forth, making sure you don't trip over that cracker walkway and those kinds of things. This is a coordination movement of vision, motor activities at the same time. Your head doesn't have to track everything that you want to see. This is a progression of development from childhood and up to adulthood, critical for maintaining coordination and balance. Yeah?
Is that why it helps to look at the horizon when you're seasick?
Yes,
Okay.
because that visual horizon allows for this inner ear to be more stable. Your body is feeling this, your vestibular system is feeling this, and your eyes are saying, I don't know what's going on. Oh no, I see a spot right over there and it's absolutely still. And everything else starts to say, oh yeah, it's not so busy. Okay, it's not that bad. Yeah, that's why finding that horizon is so critical. Yeah. So vestibular systems developing and progressing as you move your body around, your head around, you get those inputs through that vestibular system. Am I up? Am I down? Am I sideways? Where's my body in space from where the position of my head is? So we're gathering all of that sensory input to know where we are and what we're doing. And we incorporate all of these sensory components as we continue to progress forward in our experiences in the world and have all that input coming back into our system. Having head control, having balance, having all of that develop early on with our kids is very important. And we have a guest speaker who's coming next week, I think, talking about developmental vision, which is pretty fascinating. Having that ability to utilize, with all coordination, your visual systems, visual proprioception, where am I in space visually, very important components. So important to us in balance that we overuse our eyes most of the time for balance. If I had you stand up here with your eyes open, you'd be able to maintain a position of upright posture with no difficulty, with no thought, and without swaying at all. If I take your eyes out, after a period of time, you would start to see me do a forward and backward sway. If you put my feet next to each other, closed my eyes, you'd start to see lateral sways after a period of time. That's, proprioception takes care of that. Our sensory organs and our feet tell us where we are. Oh, you're rolling a little to the right, so correct to the left. That's right. Okay, no, come back to the middle. You're going a little forward, come back a little bit. And that's a great system. We don't use it. because we use our eyes. Of course, we use it, but we are really visual dominant. And so when we start looking at balance tests, we're gonna look at taking away the vision and seeing just how well balanced you can be. We don't have a really good way to test vestibular. What we try to do when we're doing our testing here in our lab is put you on an uneasy and unstable platform so that we can produce some alterations of movement in you. But having that vestibular system to know that your head is upright or not is a critical component for cueing for vision and for balance. Talked about proprioception, integration of early primitive reflexes that feed into the sense of touch and of proprioception and expression of investigation in your worlds, that sort of thing, is how this is built up as you're progressing in your development. Balance doesn't really get completely coordinated and integrated into the system until the children are fairly old. We see normal running patterns at around age 6, but real changes in coordination and balance through all of the growth years, because frequently we get changes of height, changes of muscle length, center of mass in a different location as you get taller, those kinds of things. And so those all have to get integrated as well. So we need, and we've talked a little bit about this already, about correct posture, but to look in that more detail, looking at muscles that are required to be engaged while you're standing passively. So after you have been standing for a bit, what you'll find is that you've got this to and fro, forward and back motion, anterior tib, gastrocs, maintaining some balance forward and back. We've got a little bit of glute medius firing constantly. The more your feet are apart, less. The closer together, the more that you get of them. Iliopsoas, managing at the hip and the pelvis. Abdominal and erectus spinae, maintaining that upward posture and maintaining that central placement of your body. So when we do assessment of balance, we're looking at static balance and dynamic balance, moving balance. And when we start with static balance, then we can do double and single limb stance activities, tandem stance, and then we might make it more difficult with eyes open, eyes closed. So double stance would have a space between your feet, single stance, closed stance, tandem stance, heel to toe on a line. The Romberg is a test of eyes open, eyes closed for sway. Put your feet together, stand, period of time, 30 seconds, and then close your eyes and stand. We'll do that in lab today, and that you'll see that increase of sway with eyes closed. Dynamic balance includes sitting to stand movements, walking, turning, stopping, those kinds of things. We'll look at reactive balance, reactions to a perturbation, which essentially means that you give somebody a push, an expected one versus an unexpected one. And then we'll look at some anticipatory reactions when we're doing lab. Here are our strategies that we use for balance. for disturbance of our balance. We tend to start, this is completely dependent on the intensity of the disturbance. Initially, we will try to manage the balance with our ankles. Lean forward, roll to the side slightly, we get a bit of a sway, back and forth with just muscle contraction to stabilize. Really just with no movement of feet at all. The hip strategy is to a bigger perturbation where the ankles can't catch. And so the ankles try, and then the hips bend, and you catch yourself. So this is a good strategy for movement forward. You can do this backwards, but you have a more limited response in going backwards. It is certainly possible for you to sway, have a hip strategy to the side, but again, it's kind of limited, and your trunk is a big part of that. And then the last is a stepping strategy, and that's when the perturbation is big enough that neither the ankle nor the hip can maintain, and the person has to take a step because they've been pushed enough that they can't maintain that position.
A good way to think about this is, you ever been walking down stairs and it's slightly dark and you think there should be one more step and there isn't, and you take your body automatically takes that huge exaggerated step? That's the step strategy.
And then you're right there.
And you're right there. You're like, ooh, caught myself.